first time, the 17th South China Sea International Conference on Asia, the first ever ambassador session, the first ever Southeast Asia South Pacific Dialogue, and the first ever side event conference on science.
Bạn đang ở đâu?
Các em ơi, bắt đầu chưa?
Bắt đầu rồi ạ.
Đâu rồi gì? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to live commentary sessions of the 17th South China Sea International Conference. These commentary sessions of the youth, for the youth, and by the youth. The only non-youth element here is the moderator, who is me. And my name is Vũ Hải Đăng. I'm an expert at the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, and I'm the coordinator of the Young Leaders Program 2025. First, I have a great pleasure to introduce to you our special commentators of this evening. 4 young people who, despite their young age, have already embarked on important projects to change the world and to bring peace, stability, and prosperity to the South China Sea. They are, from my left to my right, Mr. Satria Rizal Yakatim, University of Wellington from Indonesia. Miss Alisa Honig, University of Oxford from Germany. Mr. Bang Thiam, Asian Vision Institute from Cambodia. Miss Nguyễn Thị Thu Hằng, Fulbright University of Vietnam. Be careful, whatever you say will be caught on camera. So first, I would like to have a common opening question to all of you. Please share with the audience what is the most important thing that you have learned from the rich discussion of the first day of the 17th South China Sea Conference. Please, let's start with Mr. Satria.
All right, good evening, good afternoon everybody. Thank you so much, it's been Dr. Dang. It's been such a pleasure to be here at this very prestigious conference on South China Sea. We have had a strong start of the conferences, and we have learned various lessons of how to handle South China Sea amicably, from existing legal process to creative processes on how different regional mechanisms, extra-regional mechanisms perceive the threat and how to perceive and solve the problem also amicably. I think, as an up-and-coming scholar myself, I try to be a little bit more optimist, in seeing the conflict, through the ASEAN perspective. And I think from, my bullet points from the whole sessions that we have, that we need to, despite the complex layer of conflicts and interests in South China Sea, there are functional areas of cooperation that we can pursue on climate change, on AI, and this is, an element where young leaders, can directly intervene. The only space that we need to create in the future is to have an inclusive platforms, an inclusive venue. Not just within Track 2, but also probably under ASEAN Secretariat as well. Because I remember the first time I spoke about maritime security was under ASEAN Human Rights Commissions, which is very unthinkable. And this has created, an inclusive space for us to explore further these uncharted territories and to explore, creative, solutions to the conflict. And that will be my first thing, and I hope I can dive deeper later on, in the specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saria. Next, I invite Ms. Alisa Honig, please.
This works. Thank you so much. I tend to agree with you, Satri, that we've learned a great deal of very interesting things. There certainly are a variety of areas of cooperation that ASEAN states and other But I also would like to verge a little bit more on the more pessimistic or critical side, in that throughout all the discussions we've had today, I kind of identified two uncertainties or two, let's say, deficiencies that really tend to persist on all kinds of issues in the South China Sea, and that really continue to impede cooperation among states. The first being that there is currently really a lack of, let's say, basis for discussion or negotiation. And that means really two things. First, it means that there needs to be a shared agreement on what the facts are. We heard this both from the panelists being addressed explicitly as an issue that the region and the actors in the region need to face, and I'd also argue we've seen some of this being demonstrated in practice as well, that different actors dispute what is and what isn't happening and the interpretation of that. And secondly, also there needs to be common rules and regulations according to which the states should negotiate in the South China Sea, so that it extends to things such as what are claims based on? Are they based on UNCLOS? Are they based on historical rights, or something else? And then the second deficiency that I've identified is that we need to build more trust also amongst different actors in the South China Sea. Some uncertainties have been expressed as to the military intentions of different actors. That comes from various sides. And also, especially in the last panel, we've heard that AI and modern technologies really come in here as well and can also increase these uncertainties by encouraging misinterpretation, by making timeframes a lot shorter, so it is a lot more difficult to verify information in time before decisions are being made. So I think these are two crucial things that need to happen in order, or that need to be overcome in order to have better and stronger cooperation going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Alisa Honig. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Peng Tian.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. I think the most important thing that I learned from the rich discussion today, I will give it a 3-point. And the first point you give it to is diverse perspective that I get to see, maybe ranking from across the world. You see panelists from the side of Europe, from Asia and Central Asia. So you got to see different discourses on the selective engagement, selective term, let's say. They mentioned about the different interpretations of UNCLOS and also different terms like Asia Pacific or Indo-Pacific that make you see that different regions may have their different discourses on certain analysis or certain concept. So that is what makes us very, let's say, unlikely to, not unlikely, but maybe different or difficult to cooperate on a certain matter, because we see things differently from different sides of angle on the horizon itself. But despite these differences, I see the speaker trying to force a common ground, let's say, to foster mutual understanding, because they care about the maritime aspect, specifically the South China Sea. That's involved not only regional player, but also non-regional player. That second point is to give it to this particular aspect, because I see non-regional player and also the climate state itself care more than just traditional security or traditional threat, but onto factors such as environmental, oil and gas, or blue economy, for example. And the third point I want to raise about is how we try to forge commonality. Let's say I am someone who are trying to promote mutual understanding, mutual interest among nations and the people change. So I think we are trying to speak here on the dialogue. We have a dialogue because we want to promote mutual understanding, have a common ground to solve things, and quit position-based discussion and move on to more of an interest and need-based discussion. I think these 3 points could be something we should reflect about if we were to go back and serve our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peng Tian. Last but not least, I would like to invite Ms. Wendy Thu Hằng, the young leader from Vietnam.
Thank you, Professor Dong. What I was able to bring away from today's session was the discussion of the notion of competition and cooperation, and whether this can coexist in a rather volatile region and political arena, which also inserts UNCLOS, extra-regional powers, as well as the two great power politics. And And while balancing these two factors, I believe it actually inherently drives deterrence, but also, or either make room for regional security dilemma to persist and military escalation. And I believe it is the ambiguity in this that drives this discourse, as there are many different ways of interpretation that would also align with national interests, personal interests, and what we need is something that is more collective. And I believe that also is related to the divergence between dialogue and policy and the action that is being taken. I think, I agree with my peers that there should be a shared foundation or a common framework for how countries can exert themselves in the South China Sea and how that can be leveraged as well as encouraged by building trust.
Thank you, Ms. Tuhan. I'm sure if the speakers today have heard what you said, they're going to be very happy of how you summarize their speeches. Okay, it is enough about the conference. Now it's about you, about your personal research specifically. So first, to Mr. Satria Rizali Akati. You have emphasized that trust building is a critical element in maintaining healthy and constructive relations among nations. In your view, how can such trust building be fostered in the context of the South China Sea? And how do you think young people, such as yourself, would contribute to this important process?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Dang. I would like to make two early confessions before I begin to explain what trust is and how ASEAN model of cooperations form trust, in Southeast Asia and broader Indo-Pacific relations. First of all, despite its complex, layer of interpretations of UNCLOS and different, materials that are being contested in South China Sea, it has to be handled amicably, and that is ASEAN's model of cooperation. And the second concession that I need to make is ASEAN's model of cooperation is very, very limited. It has, set us, it has provided us, a very useful normative and procedural rules. However, due to the lack of enforcement, there are some limits to it. But on a positive note, how can we promote trust? There are two things that I want to implore in my interpretations of trust and how can we create a stable rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific. Is first, it has to come with first material clarity. So in any bilateral and multilateral disputes, everybody on the table needs to be clear in what are their interests are. So that is first, and the second is normative gain. So while territorial concessions and resource rights are being distributed evenly, it has to be settled through peaceful means. And in ASEAN, we tend to interpret or execute trust building differently. While in the other side of the world, in another part of the world, when you ask people around what trust is, they either answer trust is a strategic calculation, so it has to be interest-driven, relations. The second is about interpersonal relations, meaning a good sense of belief between elite leaders. So if you see my president and your prime ministers shake hands, smiles on cameras, and then they come out with some interesting, mechanism, and that is trust. For ASEAN, it's very different. ASEAN see trust as a systemic issues. So while rational calculations and interpersonal image on media become a central feature to it, but ASEAN wants to create them as a central features, for a larger normative and material outcomes. And I think, despite, I saw a lot of punditry commenting on whether or not Indonesia and Maritime and Vietnam delimitation agreement is being stalled because the ratification process is not completed. As someone who studies ASEAN and how ASEAN creates trust relations, within ASEAN and outside the world, it is not coming as a surprise to me personally, because that is how ASEAN way works. When something is potentially being explosive on public, ASEAN always choose non-confrontational diplomacy. And one way to interpret those non-confrontational diplomacy, and you went on a silo, push more technicians on the negotiation process, less politicians, and then can come out with more strategic clarity on the process. And it was I remember it was came a little bit out of the blue, and then after 2 years it was clarified that there is an issue with the median line, and that could erupt more conversation if it was not handled amicably. And as the young people, there is one way how can we, proceed with the South China Sea in the ASEAN way. First of all, I have to emphasize that ASEAN way or the ASEAN centrality is not a rules that is written in stone. If you see ASEAN-led mechanisms such as ASEAN Regional Forum, East Asia Summit, ADMM Plus, doesn't work because of the absence of the great powers contribution. It doesn't mean that ASEAN-led mechanism is paralyzed. We can still, especially on security issues, ASEAN always pursue multilateralistic approach, using ASEAN plus Troika, ASEAN minus formula, to work on, again, what I emphasized earlier, focus on functional areas of cooperation. If we have issues on, delimitations agreement, we can compound that with more cooperative efforts in trade relations. Let's, deal with cybersecurity, dealing with piracy, deal with, security areas that is workable for all ASEAN parties and all ASEAN dialogue partners. So I hope that closes my remark in positive notes. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Saria. Don't worry, we trust you. Next, Ms. Alisa Honig. You have suggested the establishment of a marine protected area on MPA to have safeguard the marine environment of the South China Sea and improve cooperation between its coastal states. Could you kindly share with us more about this proposal? In particular, where do you think such an area could be located? Who should be involved and how it should be managed? Ms. Alisa?
Yeah, of course. So just now in my previous comment, I highlighted that there is a need for more trust among the claimant states in the South China Sea, and also a need for more information sharing and sort of common set of facts and so on. And so in my proposal, I really tried to come up with a concrete, a practical proposal as to how this can be achieved. And I think one of the issue areas that really urgently need addressing is the environmental degradation and overfishing in the South China Sea. And at the same time, this is also an issue that actually all of the claimant states agree on, that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. And so, yeah, as you rightly said, I proposed a marine protected area that is to be jointly administered by all of the claimant states. So this goes to one of the questions that has been posed to me, who should be involved. I think this should be all claimant states. And the reason for this being twofold. First of all, if a marine protected area is a joint effort by multiple states, it can be much more effective. Currently, there are existing initiatives that are done by individual member states, so they are much smaller, much more fragmented, and by pooling resources, the South China Sea can have a much larger protected area with a lot more monitoring and information sharing capabilities. And the second reason that this should be a joint initiative is also that, as I already mentioned, while there is a disagreement on many things in the South China Sea, I think one thing that most actors can agree on is that the environment is a problem that needs to be faced. And so by creating cooperation on this more uncontroversial issue, that can serve to build trust and confidence for future cooperation. And member states of this initiative can also hold each other accountable in terms of making sure that everyone really plays a part in the conservation effort. Of course, the big question is what to do with China. Should they also be part of this effort? And I really think in the long term, yes, they should be, because conservation efforts will be much, much more effective with China involved. And also, I think it is good to include China in this sort of institutional binding. As to how marine protected areas should be managed, I think a really interesting precedent or an interesting model that should be looked at is the Antarctic Treaty that comes from 1959. So in this treaty, it was created by initial signatories that also had competing claims to the waters of the Antarctic. And by concluding a treaty, they kind of agreed to freeze their sovereignty claims and jointly work for the protection of the area. So I think modeling a marine protected area in the South China Sea on this could be really interesting, and that way this marine protected area could become a sort of neutral zone that is jointly administered by an institutional structure that should also be jointly created by its member states, and that should include representatives from all of the members. And in terms of where, I think the Spratly Islands pose one of the most convenient and most effective areas. The first reason being that the Spratly Islands are a very important breeding ground for many, many species. So there's a great potential there to recover fish stocks and also other animals. And yeah, to really replenish ecosystems. At the same time, the Spratly Islands are only tangential to the main shipping routes, so it also wouldn't require all that much change and interruption of shipping routes. And in the Spratly Islands, a lot of different claimant states in the South China Sea are involved in one way or another and have some kind of stake. So locating a marine protected area there also just naturally brings in a lot of interested actors. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Ms. Alicia. I don't know about the claimant state. I'm sure that coral reefs and marine turtles will certainly support your idea. Mr. Peng Tian, you have argued that the development assistance, particularly Japan Official Development Assistance, or ODA, can serve as an instrument for promoting maritime security in the South China Sea. Would you please elaborate on how development assistance in general, and Japan's ODA in particular, could contribute to enhancing peace, security, and stability in the region? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dan, for the floor. I think if we were to answer this question on how development assistance can function as an instrument or tool to maritime security, first I want to offer you to how we trace back to the concept of development assistance. In the past, Japan in particular framed it as a goodwill development assistance to partner as a post-war reconstructions, and now it's turned into a development cooperation in which they believe it is a cooperation between Japan and the recipient country to seek aid with one another. It's a foundational framework for peace. So today I want to offer a kinetic chain in which I believe aids or development cooperation is the way to form capacity building, and that capacity building for a soft deterrence to improve the stability of maybe in the South China Sea. I also have to reiterate that if Japan were to give out all this ODA, its strong desire is not just to counterbalance China alone, but also for delivering tangible economic benefits. Because as I remember the speech from the late Shinzo Abe, he said security and securitization could only be politically and practically sustainable if it delivered tangible economic benefits to all the nations. So in this sense, I also see that the stability is not only the maritime stability, but it's also giving the economic connectivity and stability itself. So that goes to the first chain in which I talk about ODA as a tool for institutional and operational governance, in which I believe you give tools to support a capacity building of Coast Guard itself, in which, for instance, Japan has been doing all this, they call it the Coast Guard diplomacy, in initiated by Zimbabwe against because they have to, let's say, fund, support, and train a Chinese Coast Guard itself. For example, the recipient includes Philippine Coast Guard and also Vietnam Coast Guard, in which they give exercise, vessel, and also, let's say, patrol boat and workshop to the Coast Guard and the police itself. Why did they do all of this? Because I see that this is one way to improve their defensive posture. Because Japan framed all of this as a non-lethal instrument or non-lethal operation, so they have to do it in a defensive posture that does not provoke China or any other party in the South China Sea. So this has to remain in the defensive posture that at the same time improve their regional cooperation and connectivity between Japan and the recipient country. In other way is to build trust. Secondly, Japan built on this narrative of a like-minded cooperation in which they wanted to build a confident building measure and also to make Southeast Asian or ASEANs to fall into their normative alignment or per se the free and open Indo-Pacific in which they want to have freedom of navigations, the trust and the open sea itself. So I see this when you have all this capacity or defensive capacity for your Coast Guard. Of course, you have that, let's say, that soft deterrent or that's enough resilient capacity to deter. It means you have more resilient and the coercion is too highly to, let's say, to happen. Because you have all this, China will not be able to, at the same time, coerce because they know the price they have to pay if they were to clash. And thirdly, I want to reiterate again what stability we can have from that soft deterrence if, of course, you have the economic stability because at the same time when Japan offer the infrastructure, the training itself, they also bring the Japan standard, let's say, equipment, material, and also the knowledge, the know-how itself. So this is one how you connect infrastructure between ASEAN and Japan, also have a common ground between the two regions itself. Moreover, it contributes to a rule-based international order in which Japan also frame it under the FOIP, and in ASEAN we have the AOIP, in which we always talk about, discuss, and find a commonality between these two concepts on how we can cooperate on mutual understanding, mutual interest, and never rule any non-regional player out. So to conclude, I think this diplomacy system is how we complement our security aspect by not just involving into materialistic power, but we more on to how we improve the capacity, the know-how, and the normative alignment between regional player and also ASEAN itself to foster a more like-minded and usual interest together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kangtian. With that, I hope that next year we're going to see double, if not triple, Japan ODA to Southeast Asia. Ms. Ngati Tuhan, as an active student leader, you have participated in many youth initiatives for the protection of the marine environment and improvement of the community life. Could you please share with us your plan to develop a youth initiative in the region for the protection of the marine environment in the South China Sea?
Yes, so thank you. First, I would like to define two things. The South China Sea is not only a strategic zone for trade and resources, but it's also an amplifier for tropical storms that have advanced the Pacific in the recent months, recent years. And I identify this as a common and shared challenge as well as vulnerability. Second, I would like to highlight that in this room, as well as all over Southeast Asia, we have an untouched pool of talent which could be utilized much more, which is the youth. And how I would define the youth participation is, one, it's very essential. Two, we are the generation of future leaders. And three, with the changing times, it also requires a lot of changing approaches, in which I find that is our strength. We are very adaptable, flexible, and we're really good at taking in a lot of different perspectives as well as making it our own. And what is the current situation about youth participation in terms of climate resistance in the South China Sea or in ASEAN? I would say that there is still a high barrier to inclusive engagement. There are a lot of organizations, however, there are a lot of unconventional talent as well as strength that remains untouched in groups of students that maybe are not well targeted by youth organizations. And secondly, there is a lack of resources for consistent youth programs to effectively attack climate resistance. So what is the strength of youth-led operations? First, I believe that we're very good at fully self-functioning. Second, media navigation. I'm pretty sure that everyone is really good at using social media as well as outreach on social media. And I believe through a lot of instances, the youth is a strong facilitator of change, which is why I had this idea for a youth participation group called Blue Trust. It is a youth-led organization where our objective is to have a large outreach and touch on talent outside what the normal peripheral of students' activism would be, including coastal cities, metropolitans, capitals, graduate students, undergraduate students, high school students, middle school students, and it shows a source of unity, but also I would want it to be flexible to each group's strength. And I believe that we can do a lot in terms of preparing as well as mitigating disaster relief, as well as utilizing the vigor as well as the extensiveness of how the youth population is spread, and our, I would say, our very rigorous participation in change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuan. With the 13th storm coming, I hope that your initiative will be ready by 3 days so that we can counter this storm. Thank you very much. So let's have quickly the last round of questions. If you could have one quick suggestion for eliminating uncertainties and strengthen unity in the South China Sea, what would it be? Thank you. You first, Mr. Satria.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dang. So if we are truly to believe in the ASEAN way of doing things, first, be patient. Second, don't panic. ASEAN way might be very lengthy, might be very processual, but those lengthy processes makes actors predictable. And sometimes we also exercise self-restraint and so on and so forth. But predictability and accountability makes us trust each other. As when we see earlier in the previous sessions, we see how actors being transparent about their positions and the solution that they're offering. Sometimes it can be very heated debate, but usually and eventually it will lead to some sort of collective interpretations and solution. So on that note, I would like to close with throughout these sessions we have talked about various things, but I saw that the security issues, particularly maritime security issues, are still under franchise within the ASEAN ecosystems. I saw a lot of young people who wants to advocate and address issues on maritime security. They have to go to the UN or any other institutions, while ASEAN institution needs to be our very platforms to address these issues. So on that note, I would like to close with trust in ASEAN, because the ASEAN way will find its way. Thank you.
Ms. Alisha.
I'll keep it quite brief. I'll just say create cooperation wherever cooperation is possible, wherever there are shared interests. It doesn't have to start with more traditional security issues. Start with low-level issues like environmental degradation or information sharing on ship movements. Just start doing more collective action, and that over time will build trust. Because then countries and also other actors will see that they can count on each other and that they can trust each other. And also by sharing more information over time, I think that will come to lead to shared understandings on a variety of issues.
Thank you, Mr. Tian.
Thank you. I think one thing that I would propose is I have to echo my colleagues' ideas, but I believe in the building of mutual trust and to have faith in the dialogue, the ASEAN way of let's say the ASEAN centrality, because you have to believe in your own way of doing things. Let's say you don't have to rush and just focus on what you're good at. Let's say if you are good at being involved in the driving force of regionalism, being in the talking engagements, and also the dialogue itself, just be it. ASEAN have to do what it have to do. I think I also have to echo the quote from our panelists earlier. They say you cannot force a cow to be a horse, because if ASEAN walks slowly, let it be. It has its own mechanism in resolving things. You don't have to pressure a particular state, or you don't have to push them so hard and so far. I mean, eventually they'll be fine. So I think real you should trust and focus on what you go at right now is the key to have sustainable success. Thank you.
Mr. Tian, Ms. Tuhan.
I would like to emphasize that maybe shared challenges should be louder than national interests, which I would like to tie back to climate change, and I will list some of the typhoons that have happened recently. Upcoming Typhoon Kaomengi, and then Typhoon Fangshe, Typhoon Matmo, Typhoon Boloi, and then Ragasa, and then Yagi. With this list, I would like to say that I would like to reiterate the consequences of sea level rise. I don't believe that there would be much reason for competition if in the future most of the landmass is already, the landmass is lost. And the consequences include forced displacement and migration, critical infrastructure damage, subsistence, and social economic losses. And I believe that this should be a louder alarm for the people in our region to cooperate and build trust, utilizing the youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tuhan. I forgot to say that whatever you say is going to be used against you in the South China Sea Academic Court. So thank you, young leaders, for your inspiring and interesting suggestions. In order for those ideals to happen in reality, we need you. We need you first to complete your studies with very good results, and then to become well-known experts in your area. And with that, I'm confident that we can help make your suggestions become reality. So once again, thank you very much, Mr. Saria, Ms. Alisa, Mr. Tian, and Ms. Tuhan. And that is the end of our youth live commentary session. Thank you very much.